Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Kerton. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. I reckon it's a pretty universal feeling that selling yourself feels ick. No, not for everyone, and we love those humans. But for so many of us, it's just not the task we want to do first and the task we feel great doing. Add to that being hyper aware of your P&L, your expenses, your ambitions, your potential, and there's a lot of pressure on the sell for a small business and a small business owner. And this is the truth for both service-based businesses and product-led businesses. There's loads of pressure on that sell. And the sell, it isn't always the obvious business to potential customer or client situation. We are selling ourselves and our brands to media outlets for feature, to collaborators for a partnership, on socials and emails, like loads of ways, all the time. We sell both what we do and how we do it in every action we take. And I wanted to use this time with you to share some of the learnings I've garnered over the years and from amazing guests on this show. Because although I 100% share the ick sentiment and struggle with selling, I also have loads of experience in being a salesperson. The irony of this is never lost on me. So I want to start with that side. So thinking about how I sold before I was selling myself and my business and some of my favorite learnings from that in case it might be of help to you and perhaps even a reframing for myself. So some background, if you've listened to, any of my other episodes, you probably already know this, but in another life, I worked in broadcast media. That career spanned 13 years, and most of those years was spent in a sales role of varying client-facing capacity. It started in agency sales, which meant I was assigned a patch of advertising agencies to look after. So whenever they had a brief for a client, they shared it with me, and it was my job to convert it. And those briefs were always competitive against other broadcast media outlets, but also digital outlets, social outlets. Like we were constantly competing against all media. Then there were the proactive pitches where the team would come up with great ideas for a specific category of clients or have a new asset become available to sell, like the breakfast show sponsorship or a cool promotion, something that the on-air team were doing, a new podcast series or an experiential live music event, and we'd have to get out there and pitch it. If I go back to proper baby KK, that's me, Kim Kerton. All my media buds have always referred to me as KK. In my first agency sales role, I was working for ARN in Adelaide, which is Mix 102.3 and Cruise 1323. Shout out to my Adelaide listeners. Love you. Please keep saying graph instead of graph. Anyway, I was so shit scared in this role. I'd wanted to get into sales for a while, but because my roles before this one were in radio promotions, which is more that marketing and integration side, it was super tough to transition over and I got some knockbacks. But this awesome bloke, his name's Robbie Yanazzo, took a chance on me and trained me up to go nuts in the sales side. He was very patient. He taught me a lot that I still remember. And I reckon he was pretty stoked with his gamble because humbly, I was a little bit of a gun at this gig once I got my teeth proper into it. I remember my first sale so well. I can see it visually because I legit printed off the signed sales form for a campaign worth $10,000. And I felt so goddamn proud of that sale. Anyway, long story short, I achieved continuous growth from the agencies in my patch and went on to land at Nova Entertainment in Melbourne, where I got to play with some extraordinary tier 1 agencies, incredible clients, and their media budgets, which were extraordinary at times. I became the highest writing salesperson in the team, signing off massive and heavily integrated and complex deal after deal after deal, and ended up winning an award for Agency Salesperson of the Year at the ACRAs, which is the Australian Commercial Radio Awards, aka the Logies for audio media. All this nerdiness is to say I did really well at my job. I worked really, really hard for it, but I was selling really, really well. Again, the irony, not lost on me. What came next is I leveraged that success into leading the team that handled all the branded content ideas and execution, still at Nova Entertainment, but in Sydney. And this was still a commercial role where I was liable to a budget achievement, but different in that we partnered with salespeople as opposed to leading the relationship. So now that I've just humble bragged my way here, I do want to set that context. I want to tell you all that so that you feel like I have some credentials to share some insights and learnings that might help us all feel better about sales. And I will say it again, despite that experience and essentially doing well at selling intangible things like air, AKA radio space, selling my own business is the hardest thing I've ever done. Selling myself is the hardest thing I've ever done. But there are some principles that I've never lost. And I'm going to share those with you with what I learned in those sales roles first, and then what I've learned about sales from selling myself and my own business and brand. And I think that with the two of them together, we might get some really cool approaches that might help you feel more comfortable with selling yourself if it's something that you want to feel better doing and do more of. So here's the learnings that have stuck with me from my sales roles. The first one is that role playing can never be underrated in any circumstance, as awkward as it is. If the first time you sell yourself out loud is in front of a customer, it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel great. It's probably not going to flow great, and it probably won't go that well. Whether your sell itself is in a pitch deck or less formal and conversational, you have to have some practice behind you. You have to have had the words in your mouth before. If it's just you, if you're working alone, say the pitch out loud exactly as you would to a client and film yourself doing it. I know this is gross and you're like, I would never want to do that. And it takes time, but it's so incredibly important because when you watch it back, it's just you learn so much about yourself. And please don't concentrate on how you look. Concentrate on what you're saying and how you're saying it, because how it comes across can improve and can grow. So you just need to be listening to yourself as if you were an audience. Notice if there are little things that you do that could be detracting from what you're saying. Are you doubling back? Are you waffling on to a specific point? Would you buy from you? Ask yourself that. And it's a hard one to answer because we all have that inbuilt bias towards negativity about ourselves. Again, maybe that's just me, but we want to try and view it a bit more pragmatically and a little bit removed when looking back at the way in which we sell. Because it's you becoming better so that you can ultimately get yourself closer to more sales more often. So role playing, even if you're a solopreneur, in any circumstance is so important, and practice often. The next one, I really love this one. You don't look as nervous as you feel. So I went to this presentation training when I was in that first agency sales gig in Adelaide. The training was in Melbourne from memory. And so I was flying in with a stack of other salespeople from around the country in different ARN offices. And we were all thrown together to do this training. At the end of what I think was day 2, because from memory, this was a 3-day training, we had to stand up in front of the room and present to our peers. And yes, it was filmed, hence point before, and it was sent to us afterwards. So I don't know about you, but presenting or selling to people I know is so much worse than presenting to strangers. It just brings up so many yuck feelings. And at the end of the first presentation, not mine, thankfully, but the end of the first person who did their presentation, the trainer said to them, the presenter, on a scale of 10% to 100%, how nervous did you feel? And naturally, that person said a high number. I can't remember the exact number, but it was high. It was right up there. We were all shitting it. And the trainer then asked the room how nervous we thought the person looked. And quite genuinely, the answer was just maybe a little bit, just a tiny little bit, but nothing full on. And the trainer followed that up with, because the person who had presented was surprised to hear our response. They said, whatever you're feeling as the presenter, if you feel like your nerves are pushing an 80 or even 100%, the audience is only seeing 20% of that feeling, maximum. And that was an absolute game changer for me to get myself outside of my head and realize that what I'm feeling isn't necessarily being witnessed. It's true that you cannot always hide the nerves. I think that's why that presenter trainer person said on a scale of 10% to 100%, how do you feel? Because I think it's pretty unusual to never feel any sense of nerves. And of course, nerves have been equaled to excitement or your body preparing you for something important. And sometimes those nerves can come across like a shaky voice, a heat rush crawling up the neck. That's the one that I get. We really, really do not love that, especially if I'm on a video call presenting because I can see myself on the little screen and I'm like, please stop. Or it might be a stuttering of words, a bit of brow sweat. And it literally feels like that symptom of your nerves is screaming at you and the audience saying, I'm terrified. But as it seems, they don't see all of it. They only see a tiny, tiny little bit. And if your voice shakes, like just keep going. If you feel the heat, ignore it. No one is going to judge you for the little nerves they notice. Have you ever judged someone for having a little shake in their voice when presenting something? I'm going to bet no. It makes us human and relatable, which are two very, very important things when it comes to a good customer relationship, which is the next learning to always be human. We might think that we need to be perfectly on point and have the answer to every objection raised, be able to talk that person into the sale really confidently, like there and then, very Wolf of Wall Street style, but that's fiction. If someone asks you something you don't know the answer to, it's perfectly fine. And there's a lot of power in saying, I don't know the answer to that right now. You've really got me thinking. I'm interested in getting to the bottom of this for you, and let me come back to you on it. Leave it with me and expect a response in X time, like later today, 24 hours. Show them that you've heard them. Show them that you're human. Show them that if you don't know everything, which is very normal for everybody, you can find the answer. And be specific in when they'll hear back from you. It shows confidence, even if you're not feeling it in the moment. And then go find or create the answer and come back to them to keep that conversation going. And there will be plenty of conversations, which is my next point. There will be lots of steps in the sales process, so don't give up too early. I'm sure there's plenty of people that'll be like, it's this many steps and you do this and then you do this and you do this. And I'm sure there's a lot to that, a lot that's really relevant. But I'm going to generalize it and just say you can never send one email and bang, you've closed the sale. Like, when does that happen? I'd love to hear from you if that's happened. You are a genius and tell me how you did it. But more often than not, there's going to be multiple steps. How many cold emails or calls have you signed up for lately? Just gone, yeah, do you know what I'm in? And if your inbox is anything like mine right now, I don't know if this is like an AI thing, but you probably have loads of ignored emails that are just coming out of nowhere from SEO experts, lead generators, or people who can just miraculously solve your business problem if only you can give them a 15-minute window. Some of them are actually getting pretty creative. I love the ones that send you like a follow-up to the below email because they haven't received a response from you. And then you're like, hang on, I'm pretty sure I never received that first email. I've gone as far as to search in my mailbox and see if I had the email they were referring to, and I don't. Anyway, that's tactics. We all have them. Good on them, but they're not working for me. And back to my point, you have to learn to nurture your relationships through the sales process and employ a little bit of patience, especially in a B2B scenario. Don't just have the pitch and the emails back and forth. See if you can engage with their content on LinkedIn if they're active. Follow up and follow up again. Don't be shy in following up. Maybe not every day, but maybe once a week for a couple of weeks. Leave it a bit longer and then come back and follow up again. Ask for an update. You're entitled to do that. You've had a meeting with somebody. And if someone feels like it's annoying, well, perhaps they've never worked for themselves and they don't know how important it is to hear back from people. And it is important to make a genuine relationship with the person. I mean, one of the most underrated skills in sales or pretty much anything is listening. It's communicating. Find a common ground with them and hear them. Remember the details that they tell you about their life and connect with them about it. Just stay on top of it. That listen more than you talk point in there is one I really want to highlight. It's my next point. People will tell you what you need to do to win the sale if you listen hard enough. If you're pitching or you're in a sales call or you're in some kind of sales scenario, no matter what it is, take a breath as you're talking and give windows of quiet to invite feedback. It's like finish a sentence, finish a point, give it some time. And if the feedback doesn't come from that person naturally, it's okay to ask for it. I like to say things like, after I've presented an idea or a specific point, what's your initial reaction or gut feeling to what you've just seen? And then let them speak. And give it a couple of counts after you think they're finished, because they'll almost always either give you some gold, something really valuable in feedback that's going to help you overcome their objection, or they'll also often just talk themselves around to a positive and sell themselves into it. So you just got to give them the space to think and to talk. Now that's all of the sales skills. Like when I reflect back on that, I'm like, oh, wow, like some of this stuff has become so innate, but I also don't employ it as often as I should when it comes to my own presentations. I fully overthink them. So, again, I'm reminding myself of this as we go through, but hopefully some really valuable learnings in there that I found through my corporate sales career. But now when it comes to the stuff that's made the most impact on me since running and building my own thing and trying to sell that, The learnings are a little bit different and they're pretty impactful, and they're often achieved through like loads of fucking up. So again, despite my experience, I have not felt comfortable selling in this new vibe yet. And so I'm learning a lot. The first learning I've had is to talk about your price, how much it costs confidently, to just say the number and then move on to your next point. The next point could be summarizing some key takeaways about how good the thing you're selling is and what it gives to the people buying it, the value, or even how you go about delivering it so they can see it in action. You can make it real. Whatever the approach, there is such a temptation in that moment after you have said the price to stop and wait for their reaction, or to just like blah, 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 and just say all these words. Your instincts want to know if the potential customer thinks your price is way off. And you want to know why they might not want to do it, or if they're going to say yes. It's so overwhelming in that moment. So I've learned to not immediately start trying to overcome objections. Like that's a big one. Don't immediately start trying to overcome objections that your potential client or customer hasn't even made yet. We're tempted to say things like, now I know that might seem like a large investment, but here's why it's great. It's like, why are we assuming that it's a large investment to them? Why put that thought into their head? So say the price confidently, move forward and give space for their feedback, and do your best to work through it as calmly as you can. On the money thing, do not be afraid to charge what you know you or your product is worth. Even if there are people out there doing it cheaper, there are customers out there who want to spend and know that they're getting great quality. So I guess the lesson here is don't undersell yourself. In the right circumstances, which in my opinion is most circumstances, prestige pricing works wonders, provided you have an incredible product. Ferrari never discount. Someone told me that at some stage, and even if it's not factually correct, which by all Googling it does seem to be factually correct, it's a bloody great point. And prestige pricing has a lot of psychology to it. If something seems like a deal, like a big steal, it won't be valued as highly. And it's important to try not to price based on what other people are doing, like a massive temptation, especially if you're doing something new. But a better way to approach it is to figure it out for yourself, to work bottom up, to make sure you're adding margins to the tune of at least 30%, because you are a business after all and you have running costs. My previous guest, Jazz, is an absolute superstar in this space. She speaks to freelancers primarily, but she has some incredible learnings about how to price that I think are relevant for virtually every type of service-based business. And I'll make sure to link her episode in the show notes for you. If someone wants to haggle you on your price, consider removing services or things out of the bundle and repricing. I'm pretty sure this is a Jazz lesson she reinforced with me, but this one I've seen around and I really like it. So rather than just discounting what they get with no change to the package, which devalues you instantly, say like, okay, no worries, we can change the price, but perhaps we'll have to only move forward with these 3 elements. How does that feel for you? That then doesn't devalue and kind of sets the relationship off on a better point. The next one is referrals are your very best friend. Ask for them. Whether it's product, service-based, whatever, there's a spin for this in every product. The referral system, it just works. If you have happy customers, they know other people and will be happy to tell those other people about you if they've been happy. But they're busy and they've got other shit on their minds. You can't just assume just because you have had a great relationship with a client that they're just automatically going to be promoting you out to their friends and their fellow business colleagues. They're not going to magically just do it for you if you don't ask them to. So let your loyal customers know that you value them and you value customers like them, and that if they can introduce you to other people, you'd be so grateful to work with more great people like them. And just for doing it, here's a referral discount or a finder's fee, something that rewards them for doing so. Many people might be happy to just do it out of the goodness of their heart if you've got a great relationship with them. You can just tell them, I'm a small business and I'm looking to grow my client base with more clients like you. Is there anyone you could think of that you could put me in touch with? Who's not going to say yes to that and think about it? And on this, it's kind of a bonus point, but it's so much easier to achieve an increase in revenue off a client you've already converted than a new one, of course. All of the baseline trust is there. So look at all you have to offer and think about how you can grow your business with them, either through new services or offerings, how to increase their basket size, essentially. The next big learning from being a person selling themselves in business instead of selling somebody else's stuff is you've got to breadcrumb. Like coming out cold on LinkedIn or elsewhere with, here's this thing I do, perhaps you want to buy it, in my opinion, is not going to cut through. But if you look at all of the value and insights like within the thing that you want to sell, you have a lot to share there that ladders back up to your offer. And you know you're going to promote it soon. So just go ahead and share some of these points. Just put it out there as value. That way, when you do post the offer, you've primed people. They know you're an expert. They know it's going to be really valuable. And that thing that you're selling, that offer that you're posting, which has more detail and insights than what you've already been sharing, they're going to love it. It feels like more of a no-brainer for them. It gets them closer to the sale. I love the concept of breadcrumbing. It just works in so many ways. Just like how can you build little bits here, little bit there, so that when it gets to the sale, it's an absolute no-brainer for people. And the next one is that none of the sales process is about you. It's actually got nothing to do with you as a person. It's about the person you're selling to. If they give you negative feedback, it's a gift and we need to use it. They're not giving us feedback as a person or, on our value, on who we are. It's about the thing that they're buying. If, like me, you primarily work alone in a service-based or content creation industry, the head noise is so rough to deal with. I overthink so many things, all of the things, and rejections hit me in the gut every time. And I've had lots of them. I've had partners that I pitched, sponsors of the pods. I've had speaking gigs I've gone for and been rejected from, consultancy partnerships. You literally cannot win them all. And the ones that you don't win, do offer you a little bit of insight in how to get better. It's a fantasy land to shoot for winning them all. And it also can not teach us very much. So try to take the personal out of it. I know that's easier said than done. And I struggle with it a lot too. But when we can look at it as more of a commodity that we can refine and improve, it gets easier along the way. The last one I'll share with you, and this has been working for me so well, it's be prolific and not perfect. I am definitely a perfectionist, through and through. I want to know exactly how things are going to go, how I'm going to show up, making sure everything looks slick. And I'm also a little bit sensitive to negative feedback. So terrible combo for these things. I wish hell I could remember where I read this statement and where I got this from, because I've now copied it onto a Post-it and I've pinned it up on my computer so that I can see it every day. So please know that this is not from me. This is not my personal learning, but I am obsessed with it and I really want to share it with you. So it's be prolific and not perfect. You need these next 5 Ps. You need to pitch, publish, product, as in productize, build profile, and create partnerships. This equals influence. So one more time for my friends vacuuming or doing something else that pulled your attention away for a moment. The key lesson is be prolific, not perfect. Your pitch, your publishing, your product, your profile, your partnerships all equal influence. And that is that breadcrumbing again that leads to easier sales and opportunities starting to come to you too. So listener, if you get the sales ick or just generally feel like it's a brand new skill you've never had to employ for yourself and what you do, I hope this has been helpful for you so that you can embrace your inner salesperson. We've all got it, and give the internal battle or imposter syndrome the middle finger and just get selling and making some serious cash in your business. If you found this valuable, this episode, this content I've created for you, if you found it valuable, please tell me about it. If you happen to be listening on Spotify right now, you can actually communicate with me as part of the episode. So there's a text box within this episode that invites your feedback. So how cool is that? You can actually kind of talk or text to me specifically to an episode. Or of course, you can go old school and slide into my DMs at Unemployed and Afraid on Instagram and Kim Kerton on LinkedIn. Please do hit up the Unemployed and Afraid website as well if you want more. There's a place there to get my newsletter and extra content into your inbox, and I would love to be connected with you there. So I truly hope this has been helpful for you and that you can sell the absolute shit out of what you need to sell right now. So let's do it. Let's get selling. Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Kerton. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.